In today's episode, I want to share with you how I got leaner without training. Now, this episode isn't about me trying to be clever or trying to brag, but the reason I wanted to share how I did this is I believe many people fold the moment they can't train with all of the other aspects that keep you healthy, fit, energized, and feeling good. The truth is this, during this period where I got leaner without training, I would have rather trained. You know, it's mental medicine for me. It's so important. I love it. And if you love your training, I'm sure you'll agree, it's absolutely shit when it's taken away from you. Okay. And many of the things that I'm going to share with you today, I do automatically. But what I've done for you is create some notes just to give some structure to this episode. But this episode in particular is going to really help you if you ever pick up injuries in the future, or for whatever reason, you simply can't physically train. And what I mean by that is do your cardio, get your weights in, or do other forms of training that you love, but you still want to keep your shit together with your health, your fitness, your body. What happened with me when I had this injury? I did a high rocks recently on the 5th of April, I believe, in Malaga. And in truth, and that's a separate episode in itself, I shouldn't have done this high rocks. I went into it injured with a hamstring issue, adductor issue that I'd picked up around 2.5 weeks before, trying to sprint on a track like an 18-year-old. And I knew then, the moment I did that, I should have pulled out. And I know other people around me, including Gabby and friends, were like, Kirk, maybe you shouldn't do this. You're sort of nowhere near where you normally are. But me being me, sometimes, and maybe you'll relate to this, my mindset is too strong for my body. And I forget sometimes that I'm 40 and you need to do a little bit more MOT on the body, especially when you are training for performance. Now, I did the high rocks, probably made the hamstring, the adductor a little bit worse, somehow got through it, didn't break records by any means, and I came away with some harsh lessons. Now, my body weight stats going into that high rocks, I believe my body weight was just under 81 kilograms, which is on the slightly heavier side for me, only by a kg or so in terms of my average body weight, deliberately. I wanted to be a little bit heavier, to have a little bit more power on things like the ski erg and the row and the sleds. And that probably would have been the case had I not been injured. But simply put, my body composition was a lot fuller, tiny bit softer in comparison to my previous high rocks that I did, which was I think it was the end of February in Dubai, where I was around 79 kilograms, visibly leaner, tighter. Okay. So I get the high rocks out the way, obviously disappointed, frustrated afterwards, but then I'm faced with the reality of I need to fix whatever's going on. But I'm in Spain and I don't have access physically to all the people that can usually help fix me quickly. I was there for 2 weeks. Now, what's important to me, I'm sure this will relate to you, is not only lifting a lot, looking a certain way, but equally, training for me is super important for my business, my mood, and how I feel, my daily energy. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do if I can't train? So what I want to go through now is the exact framework that if you are ever in a position where you can't train, this is what I would focus on in the exact order. Because I think a lot of people, when they can't train, they genuinely think, fuck it, their eating goes to shit. And as a byproduct, they put on a lot of weight or a lot of body fat in a short space of time, which impacts mood, business, relationships, simply put, how you want to be and feel for the things that are important in your life and for the people that are important in your life. And more importantly, yourself. We all know when you're off it, it doesn't feel good. So the first thing for me that you need to do, and this is what I did, I managed my expectations. Okay, get my words out. What do I mean by managing my expectations? Now, I knew I couldn't train. And if you can't train, your muscle fullness and your strength are temporarily going to be affected, which can be incredibly annoying. But it would be absolutely deluded, even over a 2-week period, for me to expect for me to look just as strong, look just as full and pumped, of course, from weight training stimulus in particular. So straight away, I lowered the bar a little bit with my expectations of how I knew I could look, I could feel within my physical shape when I look in the mirror in terms of my body. And I think this is one of the biggest things where people fall down is when they can't train, they still have a deluded expectation that they can still look at their absolute best when they can't train. Now, the things I'm going to share, of course, can help preserve and help maintain the body. But the reality is, without training stimulus, you're not going to maximize how you can physically look. And that's okay. All right? That's okay. But where we create negative emotions and stress and feeling pissed off is when we are deluded with the physique we expect in relation to what is actually physically possible during times where we cannot train. So straight away, I lowered the bar with my expectations. So that let me breathe a little bit, that during this period, it's okay not to be as, physically on point from my physical appearance in comparison to how I usually want to look. The next thing I did, and this ties in with that, I suppose, is I let go of what I couldn't control. If I can't physically train because I'm injured, it is what it is. We all have these periods. Sometimes through injury, through logistics, work demands, you simply can't train as much. It is what it is. But through injuries, yes, it's frustrating, but it's so important, like I did, let go of the fact you can't train. Instead, focus on what you can control, all the different things you can do that are going to help you get back to your full training quicker. And this is what I believe a lot of people don't do. They can't train. They don't think of all the things you can do that, one, are going to keep you healthy, two, keep you energized, and three, keep your mindset in a better spot. And I suppose four, help you accelerate recovery to get back to training quicker. So the things that I focused on that I could control was sleep. I believe there is nothing that can help recover you from injury quicker than sleep. Your body's resting. If your body's constantly on the go, it's impossible to repair at the rate you want to if you're constantly on the go, because your body's moving. Secondly, I increased my walking, my steps. So very logically, I just looked at my days, my weeks across those couple of week periods and thought, okay, I can't train, but how about in that time I would usually schedule training, I would just walk more. So my steps were significantly higher than they usually were. So my average steps is there or thereabouts, probably around 70,000 a week, around 10K steps, which is a fairly sort of universal target for many to stay healthy and stay relatively lean. But I increased it. And because I was doing more steps in place of my training, I was naturally getting in a minimum of, I would say, around 15 to 16,000 steps a day. And this is what people forget. So as much as training stimulus builds strength, helps build more muscle, more fullness, it's still only, for many, 45 minutes to an hour a day at most. And if your goal is to stay lean, drop weight, the most important core driver that's going to contribute towards that anyway is walking, because you're physically carrying your body weight around a lot more hours within a day than you are for that 1 hour or so of training. So by simply carrying my body weight around, which was just under 81 kilograms, for significantly more steps, I'm creating more energy out. And remember, the key metric, and you've heard it a million times before, I'm sure, if your goal is to be a certain weight and lean, is move more than the energy in you are consuming. So if your goal is weight loss and fat loss, the two most important metrics of that is how much food are you eating versus how much you actually moving. So I moved more, I walked more. It was low intensity, didn't impact my hamstring or adductor during this period, and made me feel better as a byproduct. The next thing I focused on was food, of course. If my training stimulus was non-existent, then something's got to give. I can't expect to take away not only the time I would typically train across a week, which can be anywhere from, I don't know, say 4 to 8 hours with cardio on a top end week. It's not only the time, but the intensity that I train at creates an enormous amount of energy out that allows me to consume more food as a byproduct. So I look at it very logically. If that training stimulus has been taken away and I still want to maintain a certain body weight, still feel quite lean and energized, something has to give my food. So what did I do? I ate less food. And I know this is very simple things that I'm sharing with you today, but I think people ignore the basics of what actually keeps you lean or could get you leaner quicker. So for example, usually my first meal or two of the day are quite high in carbs. In fact, when I'm training for performance, I'm eating a lot more carbs than I habitually have done over the last few years. So I either had no carbs or less carbs than I was previously eating because I wasn't creating the same energy out. Still had plenty of carbs in the evening, but I just look at it logically. If I'm usually having three meals or one sometimes as a shake with lots of carbs in relation to my usual output and training stimulus, I'm just going to eat less carbs than normal in a couple of those meals and then just monitor my body weight and shape and how I feel day to day. Which brings me on to my next point. Another thing I could control was weighing myself every day. And I've said this on a shitload of podcasts because I still think it's a simple habit that too many people ignore if their goal is weight loss. They don't weigh themselves enough. If your goal is to stay on point with your body weight and shape during any period, weigh yourself every day. Because if that is a KPI that bothers you and you want to feel better about and develop a better relationship with, use it more. It takes 2 seconds in the morning. So I weighed myself every day. And as I was weighing myself every day, I could see or have feedback as to whether or not my movement out in the form of steps and the food I was consuming, even though I wasn't tracking calories or sticking to a diet plan, was the right in versus out in terms of energy I was taking in versus movement I was taking out. And what I noticed over the 2-week period, the weight was coming down a little bit, which I was okay with, because if I'm not feeling as full and I can't lift, my goal for this period was, well, I tell you what, I'm going to feel a bit flatter. I know I can't train, so rather than feeling a little bit heavy, a little bit softer during this period, I'd rather feel a little bit tighter, knowing that the moment I can start training again and increase my calories and create stimulus with my muscle and start getting stronger, the muscle fullness, the muscle memory is going to come back again very quickly, which has happened since. The last thing I focused on that I could control, and this for me is the most important thing to focus on if you can never train, but you still want to be healthy and you still want to be lean. And that was my emotions, my emotional consistency, my emotional control, and my state. Because all the things I've just said there that I focused on, steps, sleep, food, weighing myself, I would never have implemented them if I wasn't controlling my emotions and state. Because remember, your state dictates your decision-making process, and your state is going to determine what you do or do not do. So for me, being very aware of how I was feeling, and even though I was pissed off and frustrated, I would switch that to gratitude and being grateful for the things I could focus on instead. Because a lot of people, when they can't do everything perfect, and for many people it's when they can't train perfect, or not even when they can't train, but if they can't do a full session or get all their full sets in, they think fuck it. They think that all of a sudden that's going to sabotage their progress. It's not. I just thought, okay, let me control what I can do, and in order to do that, I had to control my emotions, work on my mindset. I'm sure you've done this in business as a business owner. When you have a curveball, something's taken away, or you don't get the outcome you want, I'm sure you then focus on what can I do instead. And it's the same principle with health and your body composition. So the takeaway from that is, I've said this many times before, if you ever have a curveball, let go of what you can't control and focus on what you can control. And notice how empowered you feel when you start implementing the things you can control, even though you're desperate to sort of down tools and not do anything at all, or develop substandards. Another benefit of doing that is, if you ever have a period, and I've said this to clients before, where you can't train, but you still focus on the things you can do, you start removing this all or nothing part of your identity moving forward, which is going to create even more consistency moving forward. And if you listen to this and you want genuine consistency every week, every year, for the next 3, 4, 5 decades, however long you are on this earth, these are the things we need to normalize, that it's okay if we have periods where we can't do everything perfect or to our usual standard. Then another thing I then focused on was reaching out to professionals who could help my mindset and my body. What do I mean by that? I'm lucky enough to have access to great team members. I'm lucky enough to have access to professionals who could obviously deal with my injury, maybe not there physically, but could give me advice on things I could do, certain exercises, or how long to rest, or how long to do certain mobility exercises, in the forms of things like osteopaths and physios. And that helped keep my mind and body in check. So if you ever are dealt a curveball where you cannot train, think who, not how. Think who can help me get back to the top of my game quicker, smoother, and with less stress. There's always a professional out there who can help get you back on track quicker than probably you trying yourself. Then the last couple of things is more around mindset. And this, I believe, is why I have still been able to maintain a fantastic shape with my body, irrelevant of curveballs, irrelevant of being in Coventry or Dubai or London or traveling on business, etc., etc. I reminded myself every fucking day why I need to be at my best and who needs me on my A game. Because the truth is this, there are always big reasons and always important people that need you at the top of your game, even if you can't train. As much as it's great to have sympathy sometimes, the harsh reality is other people do not give a shit when you can't train. But they still need you. For example, my fiance Gabby still needs a happy Kirk, or a more vibrant Kirk, than feeling sorry for myself. Same with my clients. If I have an injury, the clients still need me to lead by example, because if they're ever in that situation, then I need to practice what I preach. My team still need me energized, confident, and efficient, focused and productive in pursuit of obviously the business targets and other things like meetings and things like that. I can't show up to a meeting feeling sorry for myself, feeling tired, having let myself go to shit with my food, my sleep, the remaining things I've spoke about outside of training. So I think the key thing is, if you ever get an injury, remind yourself of why and who. And I think a great framework to have with that, if you run a business like me, is if I ever can't train, why is it important I still have energy for my business? And what are the habits that are going to help create that outside of training? And that's going to be food and sleep and movement. Remember, movement shifts mood. Movement creates energy. You can't create energy. You can't have energy, without creating it first. And then in your personal relationship, if you're married or you're a partner, you're going to be in a better mood for walking, eating healthy, real food, and sleeping with as much quantity and quality as possible. And as I've said, if you've got clients, even if you're not a coach, I think it's so important as a leader to show how you handle a setback. I think a shit leader is someone who folds the moment they have a curveball, they have a setback, they have a challenge that wasn't part of the script. Any leader can perform well, shout from the rooftops when things are on point, perfect, conditions are perfect. But I think the true test of a character of a leader is when things don't go wrong. What do you do? How do you think? How do you speak? What do you focus on? Then lastly, I think a great question to ask yourself daily when you have a curveball is this: what would a high performer do? What would a high performer do? What would they say? What would they do? What would they choose? Because if you can ask yourself that question, even when your back's up against the wall, or you can't train, or you can't get your perfect routine in, if you ask yourself that question, it's going to give you the answers to the things you know deep down you should be doing. And I think so many times people just ignore the basics. They ignore the basics. All right. So that's my mindset. Hopefully it's helped. If you ever do pick up an injury, or for whatever reason you simply cannot train, hopefully I've shared some insights into what you can do to keep your head, your body, and your energy on point. As always, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. You get stuck around these subjects. Obviously, inside Built to Last, we don't just teach people what to do when they have a perfect routine, perfect conditions, which is rare. We guide them, just as I've done in this podcast today, on what you can do to keep moving forwards. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.